Okay, thank you all very much for joining us today. My name is Bernie Sanders. I'm chairman of the Progressive Caucus and congressman from the state of Vermont. Let us be frank and honest with the American people. The contract with America is a fraudulent series of proposals which will make the wealthiest people in America wealthier while causing intense pain and suffering for the weakest and the most vulnerable people in our country. At a time when the richest people are becoming richer, when the middle class is shrinking, when poverty is growing, the contract with America will provide huge tax breaks for millionaires while cutting back on programs that feed hungry children, such as food stamps, the WIC program, and the school lunch program. The rich get richer, and the United States, a nation which has seen a 50% increase in childhood poverty in the last 20 years, and a nation which has the highest rate of childhood poverty in the industrialized world, will see more of its children in hunger. What courage, what wisdom, what family values, what a contract with America. 25% of the elderly people in this country live at or near the poverty level. Many, despite Medicare, cannot afford the prescription drugs they desperately need or are forced to impoverish themselves for long-term care when they apply for Medicaid. Many millions of other Americans have paid into the Social Security system throughout their entire working lives and expect the right to fully draw upon their benefits when they retire. The contract with America goes to war against America's seniors. The balanced budget amendment will, without a shadow of a doubt, begin the process of leading to the destruction of the Social Security system as we know it. With or without that constitutional amendment, the contract with America will slash Medicare, will slash Medicaid, and nutritional programs for the elderly. At a time when the Cold War is over, when the United States is spending many, many times more than any other nation on earth for its military, when Russia wants to join NATO, when China has received MFN status and has received billions of dollars of investments from American corporations, the contract with America, if you can believe it, proposes to significantly increase military spending. In March of '94, the House Republicans proposed a $60 billion increase in military spending over a 5-year period. Meanwhile, many thousands of veterans will see their programs and their needs cut, and tens of thousands of middle-class young people who want the opportunity to go to college will not be able to enjoy that opportunity because federal aid to higher education and loans and grants will be cut back. As members of the Progressive Caucus, our task in the coming 100 days is not only to articulate what is wrong with the contract of America, and we absolutely believe that the more the American people know what is in that contract, the more opposition there will be. But it's not only to articulate and criticize what's wrong with it, we must bring forward a different set of alternatives point by point. We acknowledge there are serious problems in America, but the contract with America are not solutions that benefit almost anybody other than the very wealthy. For example, many of us are concerned about a $200 billion deficit, but we think you don't destroy Social Security and cut Medicare. You look at the military. You look at the CIA budget and the intelligence budget. You look at corporate welfare. Many of us believe that we should reform our welfare system, but not by throwing low-income kids into orphanages or low-income families out on the street. We think it absurd to talk about welfare reform without talking about job opportunities and education. Many of us believe in the concept of a citizen-responsive legislature. But we say, how do you have a citizens-responsive legislature without campaign finance reform so that more and more millionaires do not continue to buy seats in the United States Congress? What the Progressive Caucus promises the American people today is that we will do all that we can in committees on the floor of the House and in our communities to expose the contract with America for what it is, and then to fight for sensible alternatives. Ultimately, the final decision will be made by the American people. If you are concerned about the contract with America and its implications for the most vulnerable people in our society, then tell it to the President and tell it to the members that represent you. Thank you. Let me now introduce Major Owens, Congressman from New York City.
I think this caucus has made it clear that the programs to create jobs are our number one concern. And at every step in this 104th Congress, we're going to move in ways to emphasize the fact that we care about jobs. We've heard the voice of the majority of Americans. They made it quite clear in the exit polls on Election Day, in numerous studies in the polls, that people are concerned about their jobs. Those who have jobs have great anxieties about keeping those jobs. Other people feel they're underpaid, and then there's a vast number of people we know who are unemployed. So at every step in the way, including this first 100 days, we are going to take steps to emphasize the fact that the voice of the American people voices are not being heard on the issue of jobs. On the balanced budget amendment, for example, we intend to offer an amendment which we call our Fiscal Fairness Act, which merely states that employment, job creation, investment in jobs, as we proposed in our Investment in Jobs Act, investment in jobs are equal to national security, equal to threats to national security or war. They have a provision which says Congress may waive the provisions of this article, meaning the provisions of the balanced budget amendment, for any fiscal year in which a declaration of war is in effect, or if there's a threat to national security. In the same section, we would like to add the provisions of this article may be waived for any fiscal year for which the President notifies the Congress that the national unemployment rate is projected to exceed 4%. In case you don't remember, there is a law in effect called the Full Employment Act, the Humphrey-Hawkins Act, which says that 4% is the level of unemployment at which you don't go above. We are into a state of full employment. We say we'll accept unemployment when it's 4% or less. Alan Greenspan has recently, on his own, decided to make his own laws, so he set it at a higher level. And if unemployment is at 7%, he will declare that you have to take steps to cut off job creation activities so that inflation will not result. We are looking at the need to create jobs. We think that's as important as any activity of our government, managing the economy, guaranteeing that people have a way to earn income. That's as important as any activity of government, and a balanced budget amendment should not preclude the government, the Congress, and the President from taking the necessary steps whenever necessary to create those jobs and maintain a high level of employment. We, of course, have a bill, which we'll talk about later, which will create those jobs, and we feel that that's as important as any other activity on the agenda, more important than providing $40 billion to Mexico to bail out the Wall Street investors there. We don't want to go into a second savings and loan swindle situation. We've had one in the last 10 years, and now the $40 billion bailout for Mexico would be another savings and loans kind of swindle of the American taxpayers. We think that that kind of money ought to be used to create jobs instead.
Thank you. Lynn Woolsey is a congresswoman from California. Lynn?
I represent Marin and Sonoma counties in California, and we've heard a lot about how the Republicans have used sophisticated polls to come up with the content of their contract with America. What they forgot to do is to talk to people who have real life experiences with systems that they want and need to change. That kind of contribution is crucial to good and workable public policy, and that's why I am particularly proud to have worked closely with the Progressive Caucus on our alternative to the Republican agenda, particularly our proposal on welfare reform. You see, I know firsthand the faults and merits of the welfare system. 27 years ago, I was a single working mother who relied on welfare even though I was employed. I did that so that I could give my 3 children, they were 1, 3, and 5 years old, the health care and the child care that they needed. That experience never leaves me, and it serves as the foundation for the welfare reform proposal that we, the Progressive Caucus, offer the American public today. Make no mistake, we know the welfare system is broken, It doesn't work for recipients, and it doesn't work for taxpayers. The question is, how do we make the system work to get families off welfare for good? The contract on America would get families off welfare by gutting the system, leaving millions of children without support and on the streets. The progressive solution, on the other hand, would invest in our children. We do this by investing and insisting that job training programs prepare recipients for jobs that pay a livable wage and provide benefits. We support working poor families by providing them with child care, health care, and an increased minimum wage so that they do not need to turn to welfare in the first place. Finally, we revolutionize child support collection by federalizing our ineffective state-by-state system in order to collect the $5.1 billion in child support that goes unpaid each year. I beg the Congress, and so does the Progressive Caucus, not to use poor children in our country as scapegoats, but rather to invest in their future so they can lead strong, productive lives. Thank you.
Thank you, Ed. Jim McDermott is Congressman for the state of Washington. Jim?
Thank you. I just came from the Ways and Means Committee, and although I came to talk about health care, I can't help but observe that the Ways and Means Committee is at this moment considering an adoption credit for families of $5,000. Now, on the one hand, they want to cut off welfare for women under 18 who have kids. And on the other hand, they want to give $5,000 for people to adopt. Now, their belief is that by cutting off those kids, they'll stop abortions and they'll all be adopted. That's what's going on in this contract on America. But even more importantly is what's happening in the fine print on health care in this country. Even though the Republican contract does not talk about any kind of health care proposal, it has a lot in store for our health care in this country. Here are some of the things that you haven't heard the Republicans talk about when they signed that contract or when they were on the campaign trail. Responsible estimates indicate that in order for the contract to be financed, it would require cuts of between $300 and $500 billion, that's billion with a B, dollars from Medicare and Medicaid. Now, what does that mean to the American people? I mean, up close and personal. It means that private insurance rates will skyrocket as providers try to make up for lost revenues from privately insured patients. It means that Medicare beneficiaries, that's our parents and our grandparents, will have to pay much more out of pocket for the health care or lose access to health care at all. It means that some families are going to have to start paying for their parents' and grandparents' medical bills in addition to their own, or see their parents do without. You know, young families have enough to worry about without having to worry about their grandparents or their parents. For 30 years, they've had security in this country that they didn't have to worry about grandma's bills. But they've even forgotten how that's put together. The Republicans in this process are going to remind everybody because they're going to put those medical expenses back on the families. I guess they think that young people don't have enough to worry about raising their own family. Now, the cuts necessary to finance the contract will disrupt the entire healthcare delivery system in this country. For example, children's hospitals. Anybody who has a children's hospital in their city should go and figure out where the revenue comes from. In mine, in Seattle, 40% of Children's Orthopedic Hospital comes from Medicaid. And if you jerk 40% out of the funding of that children's hospital, it will be on its back. Some hospitals in this country rely up to 70% on Medicaid. Now, we all care about deficit reduction. There isn't anybody up here who doesn't care about that. I don't want it on my kids, and none of these people want it on their kids or their grandchildren. In fact, unlike the proponents of the contract, we all voted, everybody in this press conference voted for a plan to reduce the deficit in the last Congress. We are not the party of big government. We are the party of a government that believes the government should work for the people. That's why we support single-payer health care reform. No other proposal offers as much for reducing the deficit over the contract's proposed lifespan, but we do so by providing affordable health care to every American and guarantee their right to see their own provider, the provider that they choose. Now, the Republicans care about long-term deficit reduction and about the, if they did, and about the American people, they would support single-payer health care reform. There will be no comprehensive reform out of these people because they do not accept the principle that everybody in this country is entitled to have health insurance. Single-payer health care reform guarantees every American the security of guaranteed health insurance and does it without disrupting the present system. The American people are entitled to know the truth about this contract on America, and this caucus is going to make sure they learn it in the period that comes. Thank you.
Nydia Velasquez is a congresswoman